Hello and welcome. We'll give everyone another minute or two to log on. I see a bunch of people flowing in right now. So we'll get started in just a minute or two. So thank you all for joining us. Okay, it looks like most people that are logging in now are let in, so we are gonna get started. Thank you all for joining us for today's webinar, Strengthening Your Community's Competitive Potential by Improving Quality of Life. It's a joint webinar with both Golden Shovel Agency and Convergent nonprofits. Just a couple little housekeeping things before we get started. If you have any questions, please put them in the Q&A section or chat. We'll be monitoring those and get them answered as quickly as possible. We'll also have some time at the end for questions as well. This webinar is also being recorded and we'll send you all a copy, so don't worry about missing anything. And I believe that's it. So without further ado, we've got Andy Coe, principal at Convergent Nonprofit Solutions, and Aaron Bersois, who's our CEO at Golden Shovel Agency. I'll let them hop on camera and introduce themselves.
Thank you. Go ahead, Aaron.
All right, well, I'm excited to be presenting today with Andy. We got a cool topic talking about quality of life, and looking forward. I think everybody might be familiar with Golden Shovel Agency, but we're an economic development communications firm. So,
yeah, and Andy Coe, thank you for joining us today. I'm zooming in from Cary, North Carolina. I'm one of the principals at Convergent Nonprofit Solutions. We manage fundraising campaigns for nonprofit groups, and the majority of our business is with either chambers of commerce or economic development groups. And quality of life is a major focus of most of our fundraising these days. So thank you again for joining us, and look forward to the next hour.
all right, well, Andy, why don't you kick us off and tell us about a little bit of quality of life, and I'll chime in afterwards.
Okay, sounds good. Well, it's interesting. You know, we work all over the country. A lot of people are always asking, well, you know, you're all over the place. What are the main initiatives that you're raising money for? And, you know, honestly, it's really the top three things are very simple. It's either talent attraction, talent retention, workforce development, which all revolves around quality of life. So it is right now integral to most all of the programs that are going on right now, because it is such a huge pain point for many communities. Obviously, you've got the record low labor force participation rate, baby boomers retiring. That's going to compound the issue going forward. Lowest birth rates in history. Those don't change overnight. So this is something that will be around for quite some time. And, you know, candidly, as I just mentioned, talent attraction is on everyone's mind. Before it used to be location, 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 and now it's talent, talent, talent. So we're going to talk a little bit today, and Aaron's going to kick us off here the first few slides, and really talking about how do you attract people to your community. And obviously, it's much more than just tourism.
Yeah, and I can't support that message more. You know, when we started, Golden Shovel just turned 12. When we began, it was so much focus on business attracting businesses, get the business there, and everyone's going to move and take the jobs. There'll be some high-paying money or salaries, and you know, everyone's going to grow. And that has been changing, I'd say, quite dramatically and quite fast. I feel like now, you know, Golden Shovel works with 240 different organizations, and I'd say at least half of those, if not more, have major workforce attraction focuses. And I mean, right now, especially, it's like the businesses aren't going to move unless the talent's there. And never has it been more important to be able to showcase not just what your talent is in your community right now, but where you're going to get new talent from. And a lot of what we're going to talk about today will highlight some of those strategies. I also think that the term quality of life, just at least when we had started, was kind of almost a laughing matter. Like people would be like, sure, it can do with quality of life. And that's what the tourism group does.
Right.
And that's now changed more than ever. In fact, most economic development groups are leading with quality of life aspects, and you'll see some of those examples today. I can't stress more that the talent war has begun, and it's about to get brutal. And I think with COVID, especially, and everybody was suddenly doing remote working, which just doubled down on people being able to decide where they want to live to work. And a lot of that remote working isn't going to go away, and it's really changed the stakes, because now to get those people into your community, you have to attract them. And so I'm glad we're here doing this presentation today. It's certainly an important topic. And I gotta kick it off with a couple of case studies. There's a lot of different ways. We're gonna talk about different ways that you can improve quality of life. And since we know that a lot of the people watching today are from economic development organizations, it might be a little different twist, I think, than you're gonna expect from what you've heard in the past. We're gonna explain the quality of life and how to market it outside of things other than what a tourism organization is gonna do. I read recently that an investment in your community's brand is more valuable than ever for attracting talent to move there. The problem with it is that nobody owns the brand. You can make yourself a really incredible website, you can get the best graphics, you can have the best messaging, and that's just one, the economic development organization is just one player. Investing and supporting and partnering with your tourism organizations is so much bang for your buck right now, because those are the people that are really promoting why people love visiting, and those are, we'll see, plays right over into the other areas too. So so one of the ways that you can certainly improve your quality of life, it's really about the quality of place. And one of those areas that we've done some work in with a Golden Shovel is seeing downtown revitalizations. And I want to share just a couple of success stories that we've seen, and most of these are pretty rural regions, but they each have their own cool story. The first one, and it's something to think about when engaging quality of life strategies, is to really bring in the people that are running the businesses. Don't just count on the city council or just your board to make these big decisions. You really want to bring in the people that are living down there, that are attracting the visitors and hearing what they have to say, because they have your best interests in mind of your community, because they also want to have more visitors. They want to see their own community improved. And a perfect example of that was in McAllister, Oklahoma. They brought in a lot of these new entrepreneurs, and they found that the entrepreneurs just had a great desire to improve the community, not just for all the right reasons. And they were opening the businesses downtown. They were putting in these new places. This particular success story is about a new coffee shop called Common Roots. And if you can make it, if you can get those groups engaged, they're going to be able to really tell you what you might not necessarily know yourself about what's working, what's not working, what's getting people in the doors. And they might be able to bring new ideas and certainly fresh blood to what might be an older discussion, especially if board members had been part of the old guard of doing just business attraction and just focusing on headlines. That would be in that spot. So find your entrepreneurial networks, because they're already there trying to grow. And certainly engage the people, especially in the downtown area when you're going to do some revitalization. And at the end of this entire presentation, and what kind of, I guess, initiated and sparked this, there is an ebook that would be able to download, and it has some of these success stories in it that both of us, Andy and I, will be sharing. And so you can feel free to download that. We'll put that at the end of this slide deck, and then be able to get even more information on these stories. Another one that was a pretty big success was with Palestine, Texas. Now, this is a very economic development type of initiative, but this is kind of interesting. Instead of partnering, just with like a tourism organization, they really focused on how historic their downtown was. And so they have all these really old buildings. There's a whole bunch of them on the National Register. And they ended up partnering with the Texas Historical Commission. They made this Imagine the Possibilities tour. And what they were doing with it is once a year, they bring in all sorts of different types of people that might be interested in either investing or starting businesses down there, developing it further, improving the historical qualities of it. And this had huge success because they go from building to building. They have a full tour about the history of the place. Everybody can connect and feel even more connected to the community and hear the stories. And you'll find out when we get to the marketing section, this is all about storytelling. And just a neat way, it wasn't just a visitor tour, it was a tour for investors, but it was different than a fam tour because it really focused on why it's historic, the stories behind it, and why it's a great place to further. And in this particular case study, it was so successful last year, they showed off 7 different historic sites and 6 of them sold really, really quickly. And so I know they're going to be doing that again. And it's just a new way to think about quality of life and how to connect it to business prospects.
Wow.
And then the third one I wanted to touch on from downtown revitalization. This is a town in Minnesota called Medelia. And they had a big problem because of a fire. They just a whole bunch of things downtown. There was a lot of damage done. There was a bigger city that wasn't that far away called Mankato, and the people there could have just left the downtown in ruins. It's a very rural community, and everybody could just go to Mankato. But instead, they raised money and they started revitalizing it. And the first thing they did is they renovated and reopened this famous theater down there where they'd have film festivals and movies. And from there started expanding, and they were really able to revitalize the downtown. They brought in all sorts of new types of shops. There was a brewery, wine bar, all those kind of mom and pop retail shops with really unique offerings, and gave the whole downtown a fresh kind of face. And so taking the time, I don't think this example needs to be just in the case of disaster, certainly, but taking the time to revitalize, rebuild, and refresh your downtown is a huge part of it. It's always the heart of your town, and you want to be able to have a great place to go, and that will attract people. So why don't I pass it over to you, Andy?
Thanks, Aaron. Appreciate it. So I have also a handful of case studies and then a couple of slides just to kind of tie things together. And the first one I'd like to talk about, we're working with the Topeka Partnership, the Greater Topeka Partnership. And I tell you what, this is a small but mighty organization. It's not actually that small. It's a pretty big organization, but for the size and community, if anyone's ever been to Topeka, Kansas, not a huge metropolis like Raleigh, where I'm from. But I tell you what, they are light years ahead of many communities, and all the things that they touch. It really, for them, they have a plan that really focuses, as you can see here, on equity. Equity is at the center of everything that they do. But their 5-year, this is the Economic Development Organization, and they do tie in other organizations like the Downtown Partnership and other organizations that overlap, which is a wonderful thing, because Aaron, you talked about earlier about how, who controls the message, and if you're just one slice of that message, without coordinating your storytelling and the other things that your organization is doing, it's hard to control the message and also control the outcome. And so with this organization, they're tied into all the other organizations within Topeka that overlap what they do. And so it's a very effective group because they're all rowing in the same direction, which is absolutely critical. So with their 5-year plan, as you see, their equity is in the middle. And then a lot of what they're looking at all ties around the sense of place, a place to live, a place to learn, a place to prosper, a place to belong. And each one of these has its own story and has its own chapters of how they're going to tackle these particular issues. But with this particular organization, with their plan, it is central, it's integral to everything else. Nowhere in here do you see anything about business retention and expansion and some of the traditional, we're going to build some sites, so we're going to have some shovel-ready sites. It is really focused on talent, it's focused on quality of life. It is creating a sense of place and creating a place where people want to be. They actually do a study there that tracks how happy people are in the community. Because in the old days, a lot of people, businesses left downtown and people weren't too excited to be there. And, people were just kind of not down on their luck, but they were just kind of, not as excited as they are now. There's a million things happening. There's music center pavilions going up downtown. There's a lot of businesses that are opening up downtown. It's very vibrant. People are coming back and people are moving there from different parts of the country. As Aaron said earlier, with the COVID and the pandemic issues, with people being able to pick up and move and stay wherever they want, they've been able to actually really make some headway in this space. And you can see the quote here from Matt Pivernick, the CEO. Whether you're talking about youth sports, downtown revitalization, or attracting a new business, they're talking about being inclusive of everyone in the community. So as you can see here, this is something that is really driving their entire program of work over the next 5 years. And we're in the middle of the campaign now, and it's really taken off. In little old Topeka, their lead investors are committing $100,000 per year. So significant. Oh, wow. Yeah, I mean, this is where you're getting traction if people are writing checks to help support your vision.
I like that you said that each area of quality of life, other than just a place to visit, has its own story. There's a story for that place to learn. There's a story about people that belong there, and being able to communicate that to the right audience.
Absolutely. So education plays an integral role in each community and to the quality of life. Everyone knows that, with education, it opens up door after door after door, and not just education, but training, right? Skills training. Some of you are probably pretty familiar, and others may be unfamiliar at all with the Promise initiatives. The Promise initiatives really are focused on helping people bridge the gap between at minimum community college education, getting skills training at a community college for people that do not have the funds to pay for that education. And so Promise programs, their goal is to bridge that gap between what a potential student may not have the ability to pay, and then helping them to where they have that opportunity to go to a community college and get the skills or the education they need, and obviously be a part of the workforce. So we've actually managed a handful of projects, campaigns in Greenwood, South Carolina, with Greenwood Promise. And this is how the story has changed. We've talked about this a little bit. 2011, we managed a campaign, raised 1.75 million. And of course, in the old days, it was all about creating jobs, which of course has the trickle-down effect of also creating business for all the other businesses in the community, so on and so forth. Well, 2016, 5 years later, the message had changed. There were 1,321 job openings at the time. And so, for the community to go out and say, hey, we're going to go we're going to attract all these companies and bring in another 1,200 jobs. Well, you did such a good job in bringing in companies that now there's a deficit. There's many job openings that are going unfilled, and that is an opportunity cost, right? That now those jobs aren't being filled, so the economic impact is working against you, because those companies cannot actually function the way that they need to because there's not the necessary workforce. So in that campaign, we actually raised more than double what we did previously, 4.5 million. That was 2016. Now, for those who are not familiar with Greenwood, South Carolina, it's a county population. From the last time I checked, it was like in the mid 40s. I think it's gone up since then, but over $4 million. And this is the Greenwood Promise mission, is to provide a tuition-free path to ensure Greenwood County students obtain a post-secondary education needed to develop highly skilled workforce, improve overall quality of life, and increase economic vitality. And the way that they're doing this is they pay for students coming out of high school any dollar that they cannot fund through grants or otherwise. They will cover that gap. And their motto is, you can go to college, we promise. And they pretty much guarantee that all students coming out of high school in Greenwood County will have that opportunity, and it's paid for.
That's absolutely incredible to raise that much money for a community that size. And
it's got such traction. You can see here in 2021 raised another $4 million. So it's something that is absolutely resonating with that community.
And it's interesting to see those kinds of incentives. There's places all across the country that are literally just paying people to move there so that they have the talent in place, and everything from we'll give you a mountain bike to we'll take your student loans, or yeah, incredible.
All sorts of motivations and things. So ultimately for us, right? So we raise money for a living, and ultimately there's, as everyone knows, there's thousands and thousands and thousands of nonprofits out there all trying to raise money as well. For us, it's super simple in regards to how we're advising clients on how we can maximize the amount of money that we can raise for that organization. And as we've already talked about today, a lot of what we're looking to, it's one thing to have all these ideas and all these things that you'd like to do. Aaron's going to talk a lot about marketing and doing all sorts of really neat programs, but unless you actually have the funds to commit to implement those programs, you'll need to at some point along the line either get additional funding or convince people in your community of your vision to help fund some of the initiatives to address these issues. And so for us, it's all about coming up with measurable outcomes that you can clearly articulate to your potential stakeholders and your funders. Why? Because ultimately, if you can clearly articulate the benefit of the program of work that your organization is implementing, you'll be able to raise a lot more money that way. Because, these are businesses, right? They want to be able to see, if I give you X amount of dollars and you're able to implement these programs, what's in it for me? What's the impact? And unless you can clearly articulate that, you might raise some money, but you're not going to raise the amount of money that you could ultimately raise if you could clearly articulate the impact of your program of work. Now, in the old days, the direct and indirect economic impacts, that's super simple. You can do that in your sleep, right? Okay, we have X amount of jobs. Those jobs are going to equal X amount in taxable income for the municipalities and for the county. And then you're looking at all the other impacts. So you can clearly articulate that. The real fun begins, and the real difficulty is talking about these quality of life impacts. They're very difficult to measure. Like, how do you measure healthcare benefits, education, and some of the other things that we're talking about? You can dig a little bit deeper and get granular and look at the value lost if action not taken. This is my favorite. A lot of people don't like having this conversation. I love having this conversation. Look at Greenwood Promise. What would have been the opportunity cost had they not taken action to create that promise program? Well, you can put value there, right? You can look at those 1,300 jobs that went unfilled and look at the opportunity cost of, hey, we filled those jobs, and now look at the economic benefit. But if they had done nothing, there's negative consequences, right? So it's okay to talk about that, especially if you're going out trying to convince people of the path that you're looking to go down and the potential benefits, because not doing something is a decision and there will be impacts there. And so that's okay having that conversation. And then beyond that, if you can dig deeper and look at the societal benefits enhanced, the cost avoided, quality of life impacts, these are the things that if you can drill down and really come up with those measurable outcomes, it will be critical to the success of where you're trying to go and ultimately helping to get funded to help pay for those programs. And I have a couple of case studies that I'll talk through quick, and then I'll pass it back to you. Go ahead.
I just had a question about, so value lost if actions are not taken. How do you use historical examples to determine, or I guess you can't determine them, but to predict those, or what are some of the methods of doing that?
Well, just, I mean, I think the easiest one is just like the one I talked about with Greenwood Promise. I mean, there's, I'll talk through a case study here where, again, the trend, there's been a shift. We talked about it already, of where we were, say, 10 years ago and where we are now. And it's not so much the idea that we're going to be recruiting lots of, marketing to bring companies to the community. It's more of, hey, let's take care of the companies that we have here first and make sure they don't go away. Then we can really focus on, the marketing machine of bringing new companies here. But it's a chicken and egg thing, as you know, Aaron. Without having the people there, how are you going to recruit the companies in the first place? And this is the war. You mentioned it, the talent war. But using that Greenwood Promise example, if they would have not created that fund to help these kids go to college and get the skills that are necessary to fill the jobs in the community, you can easily measure the impact of, maybe it's not 1,300 jobs, now it's 2,500 jobs that are going unfilled. And then you might have companies leaving. Those are all impacts that you can add up and say, hey, listen, without addressing this problem, it could get worse. And here's the net loss of the economic impact that we would lose out on otherwise without filling these jobs.
Mm-hmm.
So I just have a couple quick case studies, and this is a little bit older one, but it's one of my favorites. I think the Roanoke Regional Partnership was actually ahead of their time. This is my last campaign that I personally managed. It was 10 years, just over 10 years ago. And they, 10 years ago, were saying, hey, attract new companies and everything, but they were not. They actually hired and have still the same person on staff that it does nothing but brand the outdoors. They created their own marathon that they branded that America's Toughest Road Marathon. And this is all out of their economic development office, which is fascinating. They created their own outdoor festival. So this is all done within a foundation that is under the umbrella of the Regional Economic Development Law. And 10 years ago, this wasn't nearly as big of a topic. It wasn't nearly top of mind. And candidly, when we went out to do a feasibility study testing their program of work, a lot of people were scratching their heads saying, wait a minute, we have a tourism bureau here. Why are we doing all this? But people bought in. They said, okay, we'll give you some money. We'll test it out, see where it goes. And oh my gosh, things just really took off. Where the population used to be flat or maybe down a little bit, population started to pick up. They recruited a handful of companies that fit within their space, LL Bean, a brewery, a whole host of companies that really fit within that messaging and branding that they were looking at. And it really resonated, especially with the large employers. Carilion Hospital, where 10 years ago, they were $25,000 a year. Now, I think they're just over $100,000 a year with their investment to the Roanoke Regional Partnership. So you can see, maybe it was just me, but 10 years ago, we raised 3 million. 5 years ago, 3.4, and this last campaign was about 4.1. That's the type of inertia that you can generate with a really quality program that the community is supporting financially, and they see the results. This is an organization that, is a body in motion. That's the whole idea of the law of inertia, right? Body in motion tends to stay in motion, body at rest tends to stay at rest, and they're crushing it. And, the fact that we're just in a pandemic and just finished a campaign that was over $1 million, the one that we did 10 years ago, don't need to say anything else. They're really knocking it out of the park.
So you're saying it was all you?
No, I was the guy that raised 3 million, so they did a lot better once they got rid of Co.
That's an incredible story.
But the best part about that one is just that they were way ahead of the curve, and there was a lot of head scratching, but they had a vision, they stuck to it. People saw the benefits of the program of work, and now they're writing checks to ramp it up, because now they're really taking advantage of this the quality of life. And to an extent, they really just wanted to promote the great outdoors, the fact that you could raise the family, low crime. I mean, there's a lot of cool stuff to do there, but a lot of people just don't know who they are and where they are to some extent once you get outside the state of Virginia. But it is a huge success story.
And what creativity from an EDO to be able to think, hey, we should make a marathon like that I have not heard. That's
Yeah,
really
I did that.
interesting.
I did the half. I couldn't maybe I couldn't step up to do the whole thing, but it is a bruiser. There's lots and lots of hills. This is not lots of information on this slide, but just one of the little nuggets of some of the programs that we see that, again, not traditional economic development. We did a feasibility study for the Lawrence Chamber. Of course, Kansas Jayhawks just won the national championship, so great place to be this past year. They had a $2.5 million campaign with a lot of traditional economic development issues. And when we did the feasibility study, there's a couple things that came up time and time again. Number one was housing, that it was nowhere to be seen in the economic development plan. And also affordable healthcare, or not healthcare, childcare. And it's an issue, right? Like if you have parents that can't find childcare, they're not going to work. They're going to be with their kids. I have kids. I'm not, And the other thing is, if it's too expensive for those individuals to have childcare so they can go to work, then they're not going to go to work if it costs them more than it would cost to just be at home and watch the kids themselves. So these are the types of things that really you'll need to dig from your local community. What are the needs? I'll talk on the next slide. I'll talk this through a little bit more, but ultimately they ended up updating their program of work based on all the feedback that they received on the front end. And they now have the specific goal and an outcome, right? We talked about measurable outcomes of recruiting up to 250 parents and getting them back to work. This is a huge issue there in that community. And this was something that was not part of the initial plan. Now it is part of the initial plan because it was something that resonated with the community. So just a real small example, but something that, again, it ties into the quality of life. If people obviously have quality child care that's affordable, then that's going to be a benefit to the community. So I think this is my last slide, Aaron, and I'll kick it back to you. But ultimately, we've talked a bit about the change of the landscape with economic development organizations and the idea that talent attraction, talent retention, workforce development are massive issues right now. They drive all other conversations, to be candid. So ask what quality of life programs your community needs. Where's the pain? The pain is, like I talked about with the childcare, the housing, that's pain. This is an issue. You can't recruit companies to the area if you don't have affordable housing. Transportation is in there. There's so many things that dovetail into the quality of life, but having affordable housing, transportation, childcare, and obviously all the other things that go along with quality of life. But they're in your community, there's going to be pockets that are really that they need addressing, and that's where you can really move the needle, stepping into those areas that are really causing people within your community consternation. So you can ultimately develop a plan and have it funded, whether it's through public sector dollars, private sector dollars, foundation, or whatnot, to help meet those specific needs. Again, focusing on those measurable outcomes. And then ultimately being able to track and communicate how you're doing, like with the Roanoke Regional Partnership, they're constantly reporting and updating all the things that they're doing and what an impact it means. And it's critical to keep your stakeholders and community and business leaders engaged and informed so they understand, hey, without your support, we would not have been able to do X, Y, and Z, and reminding them that without their dollars that these programs wouldn't be funded. So, and then beyond that, just ask for constant feedback. It's important that you are asking folks how you're doing, where you can improve, and that type of thing, just so you're not going to be able to improve without getting that honest, candid feedback from your stakeholders. So Aaron, take it away.
And I'm actually going to interrupt you guys really quick. We've got a few questions in the Q&A. So first is, there seems to be a mismatch between job openings and the skills of the workforce. and many job openings are for positions considered undesirable. How can economic developers help?
Are we doing Q&A now, or do you want to wait to the end of the presentation?
I guess whatever you guys, I just didn't want them to add up too much. We've just got.
Okay.
We can wait
Yeah,
till the end if you'd like.
Sure. Take some. I guess I have a thought, and I think a little bit lines up with what Andy was sharing, like really being engaged with the universities, the schools, the workforce programs, and the businesses themselves, so that you can align, and EDOs themselves, so you can align your talent traction efforts also with where the new flow of talent is going to come from, to make sure that the people being trained in the community are going to fit the right businesses. I don't know, anything to add to that, Andy?
Yeah, can you, Audrey, do you mind repeating the question? I caught some of it.
Yep.
But if you could repeat it, then I would definitely add to it.
Yeah, there seems to be a mismatch between job openings and the skills of the workforce, and many of those openings are undesirable. How can economic developers help?
Oof, that is a tough one. Well, I think to an extent it is. It gets around really some of the things that Aaron talked about earlier, and where people are offering incentives. It depends on the pain point, right? How bad is it? And then, trying to, if you are to the point where there are communities out there offering money for people to move, or they're offering housing, or they're offering a whole host of things, those are all ways that you can address that specific, those specific jobs in that department. It could be transportation, helping bring people in from other nearby communities that may not live in that specific community. There's a lot of things that communities can do. Having said that, the real inflection point, I think, in regards to addressing those specific needs is the money piece. It all comes back to money, right? In a perfect world, you would have all sorts of money to throw at these issues, but if that's not an option, there's always limited resources no matter where you live. Then that gets to be a bit difficult. But I think to an extent, one of the things that you have to have is you need to have the movers and shakers, the leaders in their respective spaces, as we mentioned earlier as well, that are all in alignment, in agreement, constant communication, so that everybody is rowing in the same direction, because otherwise it'll be a mess.
Yeah, and I was going to say, I'm pretty sure I will cover a little bit of that in a part of my presentation also. But the thought is that some of the undesirable jobs out there, they're going to have to be sweetened. They have to be made desirable, and that sometimes it's not going to, might be a different cost than was offered before for that same type of job. It might be other types of benefits, whether remote working might be an option, or flexibility on schedule right now is a major influencer of people choosing jobs, and not every jobs can do that, but those are some of the things that we've seen. Okay, well, let's Audrey, we'll leave the other questions for the end, and I'll just talk a little bit about marketing. And so with Golden Shovels into our communications firm, we do a lot of this telling the story. And I wanted to, we've heard this before, I'm certain, marketing is telling a story, but I can't stress how big of a deal that is. And particularly when you're marketing to marketing to talent versus, say, marketing to business prospects or site consultants. The stories are strongest when they come from other people that are loving to live there, and not just any people, but you want to find the people that are thriving, that can authentically share why they love being there. And they want people that are going to be aspirational to the people you're trying to attract. So it can't be so far out there, like come here and become a CEO of a huge data center, and then try to market that to college students. That's not gonna seem reasonable right out of the bat. But if you can show people that it might be a few years into their job, that have a great house and they're appreciating the quality of life and they're sharing what they're doing, those stories will work, because the people reading those stories be like, gosh, I could do that. I'm only a few steps from there. So much about what we're doing and what I'll be sharing coming up here is finding ways to take those stories, to find those people, and to put it all together in a way and then get them to the right audience. So I'm going to give you a couple examples of some websites that we've launched. That these are EDOs that I think just did a great job of capturing quality of life. And this one launched during COVID, and I just absolutely loved it because everybody was all at home and masked up outside. And EDC Masons up in Washington says, we're close to Seattle, but a world away. And you just see this huge breath of fresh air, and a picture can speak 1,000 words. And finding those photos, taking the time to get really high quality photography that authentically captures your community is well worth it. Those if you're gonna do 1,000 words in a photo, you want to make sure the words are great. More than that, we've seen a lot of groups make websites that are just focused on workforce attraction. One problem with an economic development site trying to do everything for one is that you have to split your first impression across a bunch of different people. So it's like, are you trying to get the best first impression to a site consultant, or are you trying to get a best first impression to a family that's looking to move to another location or to a specific type of talent? Now, like we've been talking, this has become such a major focus, is that we believe it's totally worth separating out and making a site that's dedicated to workforce attraction. And this one is in Greater Dubuque. They're certainly rock stars in the Midwest for economic development and their efforts. They built Big Life, Small City, your home in Dubuque, and you get to see some of these links like get to know Dubuque. Here's some resources, meet a newcomer. They have a whole program where if you go there to visit, you can meet other people that are new to the area and find out what they like and connect with them. The people that are there to give tours of the community for you with the perspective of you might come live here. And all of that is really great. I just love this photo. This is a big scrolling banner, but this one's, they have big art, but then there's other areas too, including big play and getting out in the environment. Another site that I want to put, this isn't a separate site, but they built the whole section. This is York County, Nebraska. And it's not a huge community, but boy, do they bat above their weight as far as what they put out into their marketing efforts. If you look at some of these things here, like about York County, who are the major employers, they have all these different sections, like what's life like here, career opportunities. When we started with Golden Shovel, kind of early on, we made a jobs tool so you could find jobs that are available inside the region. And it wasn't super popular at first because that just wasn't the focus. And there were other groups that were doing jobs boards. But as time has grown, it's now become one of the most used modules in our suite of modules from our websites because it ties in so nicely with these workforce attraction campaigns. And just a variety of different ways to tell the stories. And so first of all, since the websites tend to be the first place that people are going to go, we do a whole bunch of different ways. Like, and you might notice, like this is further down the same page at York County's site. It's like, why York County? The Hain family. Well, here's a family that's living here, thriving. And if you watch this video, they talk about what they do, why they love living there. You connect with them. You get to actually hear it from their own voice. The Carvers down below, raising a new family. They get to hear about what they're doing. The one in the top right is actually a 360 video, all designed for workforce attraction. We built this actually to be used inside like virtual reality headsets. And so that York County can bring this to various events where there might be people, newcomer events and that type of thing, to give somebody an experience of being there inside their community, appreciating and enjoying these things.
How do you get the glasses? Do you send those out free too?
The what?
Do you the virtual reality glasses?
Oh, the goggles.
Yeah.
Yeah, with York, the goggles, you can buy a pair of virtual reality goggles. They're about $300. And then we put wraps on them. So it says like the Y York County logo, and it has kind of their brand on it. And then they can bring them to these events. But that 360 video is really cool because it really gives you the sense of presence, like you're actually there. And nobody's moving their family or moving their business unless they have been there. And if you can't be there right in your community on the right weather, with the right opportunity, you want to still be able to share that, especially if you're afar and at a more like, let's say you're at a state event,
right,
versus in your town, then that's a way to show it off.
It's unbelievably impactful for anyone that's not done one of these things. It'll blow your socks off.
Yeah, York's been heavily, I say, innovators in the VR side. They've done all sorts of different things, recruitment videos for their universities, as well as covering sites and doing familiarization tours. This is a group called Yankton Thrive. Yankton is South Dakota. It's a relatively rural community, and I just think they've done some really creative things with workforce attraction. And one of the things that really resonates with finding people is when you get a chance to share with your friends and family that might not be living in that area why you love being there. And it's they did this whole campaign. It was called 31 under 31, and they launched every day. May in the month of May, they have a highlight of a new person that's under 31, that's thriving in their community, that you get to read about their story, hear about why they love living in Yankton, and then they can use that story. And each of these people then, because they're being featured on the site, can easily share that with their network on Facebook or on LinkedIn or on Twitter, and that connects to other people like them. And so a lot of workforce attraction is finding the people that are going to be a good fit for your region or for your community, and taking people that are already loving living there and then having them share that with their network is more influential than just putting up a live work play piece on your homepage of your website. I thought that was really neat. And then once at the very end of the month, they'll do somebody that's been living there for 31 years at the end, and they'll have somebody that's been there for a long time and about why they've stayed and what they love about the community. It was pretty clever. They do a really good job of sharing success stories also, and we've talked about capturing these. In this case, there's a entrepreneur named Ben, and he lives in Yankton, and he has a video and talks about why he liked to start his business there and what was positive about it. And as you go down the page, you can see photos of him in action running his company. They have a little interview piece with them. And once again, finding people that are already thriving and then matching that up with people that might be aspire to do that. We use a lot of social media campaigns for this. And I was going to share this particular campaign. I was talking to Andrew Phillips over at LinkedIn, and he said that this is a couple years back now, but one of the biggest stories that they had shared that had the most attraction was actually out of Michigan Economic Development Corporation. What they did, they were trying to attract tech workers. And so they marketed very specifically. One thing that's really cool about social media is you can really target very specific audiences. And so they chose just the Bay Area around San Francisco and San Jose, where the cost of living was so high, and there was lots of tech workers, and used a story to influence people to come. And the story went something like this. There was a guy in Michigan that invites his buddy from the Bay Area. And it was from the perspective of the guy from the Bay Area, and he went to go to his buddy's wedding. And he gets out there, he's working already in the tech industry, he's an avid mountain biker. And when he shows up at in Michigan, he's like, oh my gosh, you have this huge house, and look at all this land, and oh, you're working a tech job too. And he finds out his buddy's working a tech job, and that there's mountain biking all over the place, and that just the cost of living was way lower, and ends up moving, and now he's really happy there. And like those types of stories become real for other people that are considering a change. And you can target them right into the area where it has the type of talent that you're looking to attract. And some of these assets can really get built up. I talked about Yankton, the Greater Yankton Living. If you go to their Facebook page, this is even dated, so it's even more than this now, but 19,530 followers on a Facebook page is what an asset. I mean, if you're gonna go online and share something exciting about your community, they get 19,530 people that get to see that. And some of those people are going to share it, and then it becomes viral, and you can get a lot more attention. Ironically, even though like LinkedIn is kind of started as a resume type of site and was a place where you attract a lot of job seekers and job finders and job offerers, it's actually Facebook that attracts the most jobs. And the reason is because friends and family and recommendations carry a lot of weight. And so don't take it for granted if you've got a good Facebook or LinkedIn campaign. And then the third thing for marketing is think about your higher ed networks. If you got a university or a college and they have these alumni networks, so many people are going to come back. I know they hear about the brain drain and this fear of your students leaving your communities, but when it's time for them to raise a family, they can leave, they can get educated somewhere else, and they can come back with new knowledge, and they can bring their family back to where, where they grew up and have the same kind of lifestyle that they remembered when they were growing up. So I think it's just I heard some fact, I don't know anymore where the source came from. It was a while ago, but it's something like 30% of the people that moved to your community will have lived there once before.
Fascinating.
And I guess other kind of creative things we've seen, make an ambassador program where you can help the people that are thriving in your community share more with people outside of the community, empower them to tell the story on your behalf, give them the tools to do that. And that could be everything we've seen, like the 31 under 31, where you're doing public recognition of them being there. Give them things like gift cards to be able to give out to people to come visit and to come spend those gift cards in the community, or drawings and the like, and empowering the people in your community to be able to share from their stories out to their networks. We've seen things like tours, which are kind of fun. This is actually it's by GIS Planning. It's called Zoom Tour, but being able to highlight a bunch of locations across area, and these tours can be any kind of theme, so you could theme it out for just a way why you might want to live in your particular community. This is from Montgomery County, Ohio. They have a really cool thing called the Mobile Workforce Unit, and they actually will bring that out and instead of having to have everybody come to a job fair, for example, they can bring a mobile workforce unit out to where there's people that they want to, and make it easy for them to learn about Montgomery County, learn about the careers in the area.
Awesome.
Lastly, one thing that we had some big success with was in Shelby County, and they did VR videos, career exploration videos, where we made 360 videos of leading employers that were in the community, and they've been bringing them to schools, both college and high schools. And they can use the 360 video to once again get that sense of actually being there inside a plant, where the high schools it's horribly difficult logistically to get a bunch of students to bring them into a plant floor for a whole variety of reasons, starting with bus transportation, ending with sometimes safety issues and other pieces. And so to be able to give them that experience right there, like you're there, it introduces them to jobs that they might not be aware exist in their community, and gets them excited about perhaps some of those jobs that are hard to fill.
I know we're almost out of time, but I would be really interested to know why she's so happy. What job is she looking at there?
It's actually a video. I took the screenshot off a video. She's just like, this is so cool. They've been having huge success. They bought 10 headsets, and they brought them all to these job fairs, and there'll be all these booths with jobs, and there'll be this line at the VR booth where they can go and see all these different types of and the employer jobs available, and the employers pay for those videos. Then they can use them at their own job fairs also. So
yeah,
pretty neat.
That's good stuff.
So I'm pushing my time, so I better, here's the ebook. There's a lot of these stories that are available from both Convergent and Golden Shovel. We put this together to share just best practices and thoughts on it.
Yeah, and so we'll open it up for questions. While Aaron was talking, I was listening and typing at the same time. I answered a couple of questions there. So if you do have follow-up or want me to clarify comments from any of those questions, fire away.
Is one of them for Aaron too to get his thoughts. Aaron, have you seen any EDCs merging with tourism departments lately?
Yes, we have. Yeah, that Yankton group was in a good example because they had their own workforce attraction site, and they ended up merging with the chamber and a tourism group, I believe. There's been more and more of that, and there's certainly been a lot of partnerships between the tourism, if not being the same group or joining forces in one way or another. They're definitely supporting each other. I mean, if you've got a big resource of high quality videos and photos of your community that are in the tourism group, that'd be a really good thing to have shared with the economic development group. And it's time to get over local politics and to be able to take these tools and really work together to make sure that brand is as positive as possible.
100%. I'm not seeing any other ones coming yet. So if anyone has questions, last 2 minutes, type them quickly. Then I'll just ask this other question we had earlier. Again, Andy's already typed up an answer in the chat, but how can economic developers maintain momentum for these programs, which may require 10+ years to fulfill their potential?
That one's for you, Andy.
Oh yeah, well, I can repeat. No, actually, I typed up an answer already. It's very difficult. The main thing is it's all about managing expectations, right? So you have a long-term vision, you have a long-term plan. That's exactly what it is. It takes time to get there, but there's a process, and it's important that you follow the process to get to where you need to go to address these issues, because again, the opportunity cost is significant, and communities, the main, I think, impetus to force action is we cannot stand here and do nothing. You'd rather go down swinging, right, than do nothing. So the idea is we've got to do something. It takes time, it takes resources, it takes vision, it takes planning, it takes the community. So managing those expectations and then updating all of the stakeholders as you're making progress and headway and keeping everyone fired up and informed and engaged as you go forward is critical to keep everybody motivated. But again, law of inertia, once you get that ball rolling, it will literally take on a life of its own, and it will pick up speed as you progress, and then it will take on a life of its own, and everyone wants to get on the moving train. So I think the most difficult part is getting the programs up and running and getting some momentum, and eventually it will take on a life of its own, and you'll be in the promised land.
That sounds great.
Yeah. Well, thank you so much for everybody for your time.
And thank you,
thanks,
Andy, for presenting.
Yeah, pleasure presenting with you, Andy, and thanks everybody for attending.
Thank you. Have a great rest of your days.